TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News, broadcast to you from Jerusalem. Jerusalem is set to approve the IDF's operational plans for the looming Gaza offensive. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee asserts that Israel is not to blame for the hunger in Gaza. President Donald Trump has a meeting in which former British Prime Minister Tony Blair and the president's son-in-law and architect of the Abraham Accords Jared Kushner counseled him on the so-called day after the war in the Gaza Strip. Jerusalem's Security Cabinet is expected to approve the latest IDF operational plans to conquer Gaza City in a meeting scheduled to be held next Sunday. The ministers are also scheduled to discuss the negotiations with the Islamist Hamas vis-a-vis releasing the hostages amid the gaps between the parties' positions. Moreover, according to informed sources, the Security Cabinet is also expected to discuss Israel's expected political retaliation for the anticipated international recognition of Palestinian statehood during the upcoming session of the United Nations General Assembly. One of the possibilities under consideration is declaring Israeli sovereignty over parts of the so-called West Bank districts of Judea and Samaria. Meanwhile, in a press briefing to Air Press, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee accused the European government's intent on recognizing Palestinian statehood of violating the so-called Oslo Accords of 1993 and 1995.
I think that there is a very unfortunate thing that has developed when the Europeans have pushed for unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state in the midst of the war in Gaza. The timing was terrible. But beyond that, it's a violation of the Oslo Agreement to begin talking about unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state that does not involve including Israel in that discussion and having their cooperation. It's had a negative effect. So the effect has been, first, it's given Hamas a sense of being emboldened, empowered. Why would they want to end up with some kind of a deal when if they can just sit tight, they in essence would be rewarded for what they did on October the 7th. The second thing that happened, it kind of caused some Israelis to say, well, if they're going to do that, then we'll just declare sovereignty over parts of Judea and Samaria. And the third thing it did, it put a real chill on what we had been working on for many weeks, which was some type of resolution to what has been a financial stalemate between the Palestinian Authority and Israel.
Following the publication of the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, claiming plausible famine of up to 30% of the Gazan population in 3 localities, Ambassador Huckabee asserted that he does not believe Israel is at fault, highlighting that even the United Nations admitted to the fact that 92% of its own aid distribution had been stolen by Hamas.
I absolutely do not think that Israel is the cause of a famine. Israel has put over 2 million tons of food into Gaza. Never in the history of mankind, not once, no one can tell me it's ever happened, that a country that was attacked aggressively, like Israel was attacked on October 7th, somehow is supposed to be responsible to feed those who attacked them. That has never happened. Yet Israel has done that very thing. They have continued to pour food, massive amounts of food into Gaza. More food has gone into Gaza than has ever gone into a country during a war in the history of mankind. So the reason that people are hungry in Gaza is not because Israel is making them hungry. If you look at the people who are Hamas, no, let me finish. If you look at the people who are leading Hamas, they're not hungry. They are very well fed. And so it's totally inappropriate to say that it's Israel's fault. Hamas has stolen most of the food that has gone into Gaza. They've stolen it, and then they've turned around and sold it on the black market to the very hungry people who should have been getting it for free.
Meanwhile, in New York City, the United Nations Security Council held an emergency meeting on the IPC report, during the course of which both allies and adversaries have voiced a list of condemnations and allegations against Israel.
The IPC's confirmation of famine in Gaza City marks the first officially recorded famine in modern history in the Middle East. It is entirely man-made, and, as my Foreign Secretary has said, it is a moral outrage. Over 100 children in Gaza have died of malnutrition, while food is sitting at Gaza's borders. I have two clear messages for Israel. Immediately lift restrictions and allow food, medical supplies, and fuel to reach those in desperate need, in line with international humanitarian law.
The sole member of the United Nations Security Council that stood firm by the state of Israel was no other than the United States of America.
Between May 19th and August 25th of this year, over 85% of trucks and 62,000 pallets of aid were intercepted in transit in Gaza. The hard truth is that the international community has poured hundreds of billions of dollars into Gaza over the years, while turning a blind eye to the fact that it was subsidizing and facilitating Hamas's creation of a terrorist stronghold.
On behalf of the State of Israel, Ilana Gritsevsky, who was released from Hamas captivity after 55 days as a hostage, voiced outrage over the double standard and hypocrisy that was showcased by the Security Council members, to include also Western democracies such as France, Britain, Denmark, Greece, and Slovenia.
Why Hamas, who burn children alive, rape women and mutilate bodies, kidnap children and adults, why are they not condemned in the same way? Why is Hamas considered differently? Why is it not considered the terrorist group that it is? Why are Jewish victims questioned, and why are our accounts questioned when others immediately believed? This is a double standard, and it's hypocritical. It's not just hypocrisy, it's betrayal.
Meanwhile, Israeli ambassador to the world body, Dani Danon, seized the opportunity to proclaim that the IPC report, which claimed plausible famine, was in fact fabricated by political motives. It's important to highlight that the Israeli Foreign Ministry published its response to the IPC report, in which it revealed that the IPC essentially fabricated non-existent data, violated its own rules, engaged in manipulative cherry-picking of data, and concealed data contradicting its own agenda. The worst part of the fabricated report included the IPC's claim of 182 deaths, more than the 6 which Hamas had claimed, absent any evidence on either account.
Data that doesn't exist is added to that report. First example, Hamas reports about 6 cases of death every day in Gaza, while the IPC standard, in order to declare famine, is 188. They are missing 182 cases of death daily, even when it's based on Hamas data. What IPC did in its report? Added a virtual additional 182 death cases a day, just to meet the threshold in order to come to the prefabricated conclusion of famine.
Meanwhile, in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump chaired a meeting on the Gaza war, receiving input from his Mideast envoy, Steve Witkoff, former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, and his son-in-law, former Middle East envoy and architect of the Abraham Accords, Jared Kushner. According to the London-based Reuters news agency, citing White House officials, Food aid deliveries, the hostage crisis, and post-war plans were among topics discussed in the meeting. Moreover, after the meeting, Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar was hosted by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, during the course of which Jerusalem's top diplomat thanked his American counterpart for the Trump administration's unwavering and firm support for the State of Israel. Moreover, the two top diplomats also discussed separate challenges and opportunities related to the Middle East, to include the Iranian topic, the war against Islamist Hamas in the Gaza Strip, and the upcoming UN General Assembly that is scheduled to take place next month, during which France, Australia, Canada, and other countries are expected to recognize a Palestinian state. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. As ever, please keep praying for the 50 hostages, of whom at least 20 are alive, who've now endured 692 days in brutal Hamas captivity in the Gaza Strip. Pray also for the Christian and Druze communities in southern Syria, who are, as we speak, besieged by both Islamists and jihadist forces, and pray also for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we'll see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.